Welcome back to the Serving My Master podcast. Before we continue, I would like to address two questions that were asked, at least for clarification, in what we've been discussing. The first question was more of a general question. Why should a person take the time to focus on trying to understand these ideas on why we must and why we should serve Hashem? Why not instead focus on trying to find a little bit more reason, trying to find what would be called Pnimius HaTorah, try to find, as what we would call in Yiddish, a Geschmack in mitzvahs? Of course, the first thing to say is that these are not two contradictory ideas. A person should do both. A person should try to understand what is behind every mitzvah. A person should try to understand the pnimius of every mitzvah. A person should try to understand the effect that mitzvahs have on us and on the world. And as the Nefesh Chaim puts it, the person should try to understand how when a person does a mitzvah or even thinks about doing a mitzvah, he creates entire worlds and he builds entire universes just by thinking about doing a mitzvah. So of course a person is obligated and should invest time in doing just that. But I would like to explain why we do this podcast and why we are trying to approach life with an idea of trying to understand what it means to serve a master, why we should serve a master, and where this is coming from. And the reason for that is because from one end, when a person understands that he has a beautiful, beautiful machine with unimaginable features and so many buttons and so many capabilities, and he takes a manual and he tries to learn all the different types of actions that the machine can do and the different types of attributes that it has, it is very nice to spend even 5 years to try and understand the power of this machine. Try to imagine a radiology machine. Machines that have immense power, and you spend many, many hours trying to learn every feature, what it can do, and how it accomplishes that feature. But then there is an understanding of what is at the core of the machine. What is the engine of the machine? What is the battery that makes the machine run? What is the electricity that makes the machine run? And of course, understanding what makes it run is something that we can't live without. We cannot live a life of meaning. We cannot live a life where we understand that every day and every minute and every moment is important if we don't understand the electricity that runs through life. That is one side of the coin. Another side of the coin. I think it is important to try to understand that when a person finds themselves in a moment of chaos, when a person finds themselves in a time where there is no time for reason. For example, if one would imagine a mother seeing a child being trapped under a car, and with unimaginable superhuman power, she goes and she lifts up the car to save her child, or any other such example. Of course, that action has nothing to do with reason. Of course, not only has it nothing to do with reason, but reason would be an obstacle for her to save her child. Reason would be there to tell her you're going to hurt your muscles, you might break your bone, you might pull a nerve or whatever. Reason might actually stand in her way. What saves her child and herself is an instinct, knowing what she must do. Not why and not how and not when, but what she must do. Knowing what one must do as an instinct ultimately is the one thing that can save someone in a time of chaos. Now, of course, maybe this is just my opinion, but I believe that right now we live not only in a day of chaos, not in a moment, but in a world of chaos. We live in a world where constantly, daily, weekly, and even hourly, we hear so many things that are going on around us that puts us in a position where we're constantly in a world of chaos. There's so many things that are pulling us to each side. And therefore I believe that the only way to survive this moment is by knowing what we must do, and by finding that instinct that will lead us in a way and that will teach us what we must do. And indeed, I am calling it an instinct. As we know, there is a big difference between knowing something, learning something, practicing something, and having something as an instinct. There are certain things that Hashem put into creation in all beings, and also in human beings. But it's more striking if we look in animals, because animals, at least most animals, for the most part, have only instinct. They have an instinct how to survive. They have an instinct how to not leap off from the edge of a mountain. That's an instinct. There is no reason. There is no brain behind that. Or in our language, there is no chelik elikam emal, there is no image of God in that. It is an instinct that Hashem put into creation. Not only that, as much as we have physical instincts, we have mental instincts. As we know, a lot of times if a person goes through a traumatic period in their life, instinct might kick in and make them forget, at least for a period of time. And the reason for that is because Hashem put an instinct into all beings that they should be able to survive mentally, physically, emotionally, and so forth. And therefore, if there's an instinct to survive physically, if there's an instinct to survive mentally, if there's an instinct to survive emotionally, which today with science we can all see there definitely is, then there must be a way, there must be an instinct to survive spiritually. There must be an instinct to not only be able to survive, but to succeed in the basic purpose and mission of why we are in this world in the first place. Now, of course, this instinct might be underdeveloped. Of course, this instinct might be something that is hiding behind many other things. And of course, we can say that we need to learn and try to develop this instinct and take time to discuss it, and maybe even say that trying to think about reasons and pnimius HaTorah will help us develop that instinct. But the idea of this podcast is to discuss what is the basic, what is the electricity that runs through all of it. What is the one thing that no matter where we are, no matter how we lead our lives, can not only help us find a way out, but can be the shining light that can lead the way in every situation. And as the title of this podcast suggests, serving my master. How can one be able to serve their master constantly, no matter where they are? By being able to ask the question, how in this moment can I serve my master? When in a time of challenge, in a time of chaos, in a time of question, in a time of doubt, a person should be able to stop themselves in their tracks and say, before I run off using my brain and all my biases and ideas to try and decide what I'm going to do next, how about stopping for a second and asking the basic question, as a servant, what am I supposed to do? And of course, even in a time where a person tries and truly and honestly tries to find the right answer, and still finds more than one direction that one can go and say, whether I do this or I do this, they're both in the service of my master. Even then, a person can use this idea and perspective and saying, you know what, it seems that my master wants me now to not know for sure what to do. And that is okay too. Because if that's what the master wants, as a servant, that's exactly what I'm not just willing to do, but I'm happy to do. And as we discussed, one of the things that we saw by Yaakov, being in a challenge, being in a position where it's clear what the problems are, or when Yosef HaTzadik, so clearly he's being sold into slavery, there was no question about it. It didn't destroy him. It built him. It showed him, I'm telling you clearly what I want. when a person finds themselves in a challenge, using this perspective not only can bring them back, but it can put them in a position of joy and happiness by knowing, I know for sure what Hashem wants from me today. In any case, in tomorrow's episode, we will continue in the build-up of our discussion of how we got to Matan Torah and what it all means. Thank you again for joining me today, and I look forward to continuing this discussion with you. Have a wonderful day.